And we're looking at the character of this man, and how that he's in a theological seminary. He's in the school of discipleship. And disciple is one who follows. So think of a path, okay, and someone is leading out on that path. In fact, they're carving the trail. Okay, let's just change this a little bit. They're actually creating the trail. Okay, they're not in a certain way not following someone else's trail, although we understand that these things were prophesied, but they're actually blazing the trail. And so Jesus is the one who blazes the trail. We're on the path, we're on that trail behind him. Okay? So we've decided to follow Jesus as he blazes the trail. That's what a disciple is, someone who follows, walks down that path that's already been carved out. Okay? So I remember in the Boy Scouts they taught you all the signs and such when you're out in the woods to look for certain signs and markings and things like that maybe someone had left. Okay, so you know you're on the right path, right? So it might be a broken twig, it might be a notched tree, it might be 3 rocks piled up, or whatever. Okay, but it was to mark that you're still on the right path, still on the right path. Okay, what do we have to mark to see if we're on the right path, or to see if we've gotten off the side path? Right here, this is it. Okay, so he blazed the trail, and we're following it. We're disciples, and so we're studying this particular one, the Apostle Peter, who needed sometimes he needed to be, he would kind of veer off a little bit, and he needed to be, kind of slapped a couple times and brought back to the path. Okay, so he was in the school of discipleship. Well, aren't we all? We all are. Okay, and thankfully, we have someone like this character to show us the right and the wrongs of it, so that we can learn. So we can avoid a lot of slappings if we just look at his character, right? We don't have to get slapped for it. And in fact, if we do get slapped for it, shame on us, because why not learn the lesson from the guy who got slapped ahead of us? Right? Okay. Alrighty. All right. And he didn't really slap him. There might have been times he wanted to, but he really didn't. All right. So we have a title here, You Will Never Wash My Feet. Well, what's that all about? You will never wash my feet. Who recalls the setting and what was going on there?
Jesus was wanting to wash the apostles' feet.
Yeah?
And he was, you're not going to do that.
Yeah. It was the same.
You're our Lord. Why would you wash our feet?
Yes. And why was that particular action offensive to him? What was it about that particular doing that?
Only slaves did that.
Yes, it was. Yeah, his Lord, our Lord would do it because it was the practice of a servant doing that. Okay, and so in fact, then he had to say, "Let me remind you who I am." Okay, and so he didn't come per se. I mean, I'll say yes, he did. Actually, he did. He did come as their king, right? And it's such a mixture of things. No wonder they were confused. He did come as a servant, and he did come as a king. And aren't those kind of opposite on the wage scale? Kind of opposite, okay? Servant, king. They are opposite. And he came as a servant, but he also came as a king. They rejected him on this note. And they said, we have no what? King but Caesar. And so, but it was foretold, behold, is it Deuteronomy 9:9? What, you want to look that up? I believe it's Deuteronomy 9:9 that they were to look for someone who would come to them as, in other words, Zechariah prophesied that someone would come to them riding upon a foal of a donkey. And he said, you got there Deuteronomy 9:9?
I don't think it's 9:9.
Zechariah 9:9, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I said, then I said, Zechariah said, okay, so.
We didn't even catch that.
I know, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Deuteronomy's a little early for
Well,
that.
sometimes I catch on the things slowly too. We came on this pickup on the way to church this morning, and he says, "Oh, look at that!" It says honk if you're Amish. And I laughed, and everything. She laughed, and then I don't know what thought I thought, but I laughed. And then we're driving down the road. I go, "Oh, of course you're not going to honk if you're Amish because they don't drive pickups." And she goes, "What? You didn't get that already?" Back there when I pointed at sometimes it just kind of flowed.
So you wonder why it was funny the first time.
Yeah.
Made him
Okay,
laugh.
so then what were you laughing at the first time?
Courtesy laugh, right?
Courtesy laugh, yeah. All right. So Zechariah 9:9.
It says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding on a donkey, the colt, the foal of a donkey."
All right. Your king, lowly. Yeah, something's not adding up here, okay? Anyway, he did fulfill that, didn't he? He did fulfill that, okay? But in their minds, this bigger-than-life character was going to come, the Messiah, the son of David. And it was sung by the women of the Old Testament that Saul, yeah, sure, Saul, our king, has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. And so and then the son of David, they were expecting Jesus, the son of David, they were expecting the Messiah, rather, as the son of this great David. And so he came in this fashion. It was foretold that he would be their king, but they rejected him as that. And so, so this idea of, yeah, my Lord, the Lord would never do this, and we're going to find out what's going on here. So let's turn over to John 13. And some of you might recall that John 13 through 17, I believe it was all in the upper room. That last night, before he would be arrested, and things would change. We talk about 9/11 changing the course of not only this nation, but the whole world. Everyone refers now to 9/11. Pre 9/11, after 9/11. Major changes, right? Major changes. It's like 9/11 kicked off a storm that just has not ceased, has not slowed down. It's just a continual storm. Okay? Sometimes it gets extremely loud, sometimes not as much, but it's still, the effects are still there. Well, the crucifixion of Christ was a major change for humanity. And so this night is beginning that change. So 13, 1 through 17. And Noah, would you read that for us? Kind of set the tone here for this whole story. 13, 1 through 17.
Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour was come, that he should depart out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. And supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he was to come from God, and went to God. He riseth from supper, and laid aside his garments, and took a towel, and girded himself. After that he poureth water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. Then cometh he to Simon Peter, and Peter saith unto him, Lord, dost thou wash my feet? Jesus answered and said unto him, What I do thou knowest not now, but thou shalt know hereafter. Peter saith unto him, Thou shalt never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, If I wash thee not, thou hast no part with me. Simon Peter saith unto him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus saith unto him, He that is washed needeth not save to wash his feet, but is clean every whit. And ye are clean, but not at all. For he knew who should betray him. Therefore he said, Ye are not all clean. So after he had washed their feet, and taken his garments, and was set down again, he said unto them, Know ye what I have done to you? Ye call me Master and Lord, and ye say well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that ye should do as I have done to you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither is he that is sent greater than he that sent him. If ye know these things, happy are ye if ye do them.
All right, so what a scene is this? This is the same one who is now stooping down in this lowly servant fashion to wash their feet, who raised the dead, and they witnessed it. On more than one occasion he raised the dead, who healed thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And yet, in the quietness of this room, no crowds around, just his disciples, he does this. Okay? And so, no wonder they're taken back at all of this. All right, so let's read some thoughts here and see if we can't extract information out of this and make some sense of it. So, Allie, would you start us out here in verse 10? You will never wash my feet.
Mark A.
Yeah, A. I'm sorry.
We move along closer now to the time of Christ's crucifixion. Jesus had just finished eating the last Passover with his disciples, and having also instituted the Lord's Supper with them. After they had eaten, Jesus rose up, wrapped a towel around his waist, and began to wash the disciples' feet. Peter became very indignant over the very idea of Jesus humbling himself to the level of a common slave. He wasn't able to allow Jesus to wash his feet.
He wasn't about to. Because he was indignant.
Right.
Okay.
But no sooner had Peter spoken those words that Jesus quickly replied to Peter that if he did not wash his feet, then Peter would have no inheritance with him. Peter fully understood what Jesus had just told him, and therefore quickly changed his mind. In fact, Peter then went so far as to ask Jesus to not only wash his feet, but his hands and his head as well. Peter wanted to make sure he wasn't going to lose his inheritance.
How many caught that? But when Noah read that, did you wonder why he changed his mind just like that? I mean, how do you become so indignant over it and say you will never to, oh, well, then it must have been something in what Jesus said that changed his mind, okay? And so he got it. He got it, okay? And so that's what we're breaking this scene down. It's another strong learning session for this man, the Apostle Peter. But not only him, but for all the apostles, okay? Because this lesson was for all of them. It's just that he jumped out and made this statement, okay? And so it was really on the benefit, or for the benefit of all of them, that they, that not only Peter, but they all understood what he said. You are to wash each other's feet. Now, I don't believe he meant that literally. Now, there's some churches that do. Some churches have a third ordinance of a foot washing, okay? But I believe that it's meant figuratively. When we wash one another's feet, it's an indication of our humbling ourselves to them, okay? And in my understanding, it's coupled with a forgiveness, okay? If I'm washing your feet, I'm forgiving you, okay? And so we do that for one another, because he understood that he was raising, I was going to say raising, yeah, he was raising. He was training or raising his corps of officers. And unless they understood the servant principle, if they just had in their mind, well, we're officers, there would be problems down the road, not only between them and the sheep, okay, or the ones that they would be training, but among themselves. Who's the greater officer? You see, how did Jesus know that? Because those issues already came up during his ministry. Those already came up. Those were problems already among them. And so this is like that final, well, not really the final, because the crucifixion would be the final, but this is very strong message that he wanted to send to them. That as you work among yourselves, you must have that spirit of forgiveness, okay, of yourselves. Or else, if that doesn't happen, and you don't make that work for you, then you're going to disqualify yourself for inheritance, okay? And so, all right, let's keep reading. Vicki will give you, let's give you a couple of those. 11, I'm trying to decipher my Roman numerals here. 11 and 12.
Did we read?
Oh, that's right. You got to finish D and E. Sorry, go ahead and finish that.
But Jesus reassured Peter that what lesson he was trying to convey involved a cleansing of only the feet and not the whole body. Once again, we see the Apostle Peter speaking out of ignorance as to what the Lord was trying to teach them. All too often, we ourselves think we know God's business better than he, and we run out ahead of him instead of following his leading. Here, Peter provides another example of what not to do.
Okay, running out ahead. All right, let me just illustrate this. Let's just illustrate this. Okay, this is some people. Okay, following who? Jesus. Okay. But now we're going to put you out in front. Doesn't that just kind of send shivers down your spine? Okay, you're out in front of Jesus. That's a scary position. Okay. He knows all things. He knows what is ahead. In fact, when Peter denied Jesus, and Jesus says, "You're going to deny me," and Peter says adamantly, "No, I'm not. You don't know me. You don't know my heart." He says, "Oh, I'm afraid I do. You're going to deny me not once but 3 times." "No, you're not." "Yes, I am." "Yes, you are." When that did happen, and Jesus met up with Peter after that, he says, "Peter, do you love me?" And he says, "Lord, you know all things." And so he knows all things. To run around and get in front is to say, "I know all things. I know what's out in front. Follow me. I'll blaze the trail." Okay? That's a scary position, isn't it? You don't want to be there. Okay? It's always safe to be in the draft of Jesus, who's carved the way and has cut down the branches and cleared the path. It's not going to be easy. I mean, it's not going to be easy to follow him, but it'll be easier, right? Easier. Okay. All right. So we don't want to. Let's just erase this because that's just a scary, even a scary picture. Okay. We don't do that. All right. So. An example of what not to do, but that's okay because he learned and we're learning. We're all learning. Okay. All right. Vicki, we'll give you the next couple of Roman numbers.
I will never be offended.
Mm-hmm.
During that same evening after supper, Jesus, knowing his time was drawing near, once again brought up the subject of his impending torture and crucifixion. Only this time Jesus said nothing that really bothered the disciples. Jesus foretold that they would all abandon him during that time. Of course, who would speak up but Simon Peter, stating that although the others might abandon Jesus, he personally would never do such a thing. Peter even went so far as to say if it cost him his very life, he would never deny his Lord. And all the other disciples said the same thing. But Jesus, of course, knowing better, told Peter that he would in fact deny him 3 times that very night.
That very night. Not stretched out over the next few years, but all in one night. Okay, I mean that's a pretty intense denial, isn't it? I mean you've got 3 chances at this, and rapid fire you deny him 3 times. That's amazing. Okay, who else would know that but Jesus? Who could call that one but Jesus? Okay, all right. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's funny also because Jesus told Peter he was going to deny him. So it's kind of like when somebody says, well, you're going to do blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You pay attention to that so you don't do it.
Yeah.
And he just fell into that. It's like he
Yeah.
completely dismissed whatever Jesus said. And
Good
fell right
point.
into the trap.
That's a good point. Instead of putting on high alert, okay, and making sure I don't, okay.
Right.
Okay, you did, yeah. That's a good point. Good point. Okay.
Peter draws his sword. Is that where I'm at?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it was to prove to Jesus that he was sincere when he said that he would not deny him, or perhaps it was purely spontaneous, At any rate, we see Peter drawing a sword to defend Jesus and cutting off a man's ear.
Where's this going on? We didn't read the passage, but what's happening here?
Jesus is getting arrested.
He was getting arrested, okay? Judas had returned, because remember, he dismissed Judas, okay? And had given him the sop. He had dipped the bread into the juice as a custom. You know, like restaurants, they'll give you bread, and they'll give you olive oil and spices, and you'll dip that bread into that and soak it up, and then you eat it, okay, with your fingers. That's what they did back then. So he did that, and then he handed it to Judas and says, what you do quickly. And so he left. Of course, the others were confused as to what was going on, you know. And then they sang a hymn. After taking the Lord's Supper, they sang a hymn and went out into the garden. Okay, and they were out there, and after a while, here comes Judas leading the temple guard, the temple soldiers. Okay, he'd already cut the deal with them, so now he's leading them. He says, I'll know where he'll be," and so he brought them to him. Well, Peter, seeing this, pulled out a sword and to defend Jesus. Okay, well, you would think again that he's, you know, if he's really the Christ, he's really the Messiah, and this is all pre-crucifixion, so they don't have that image yet. Okay, yeah, it's been discussed, it's been brought up that he would die, but in Peter's mind, he's still there, and I'm gonna fight for him. Okay, so he draws out a sword, and you think Jesus would be appreciative of this maneuver, okay, of this loyalty? No. Yes.
Well, meanwhile, how many times did they want to lay hands on him, and everybody knew that?
Yeah.
And Jesus just slipped around, right out and under their grasp.
Yes. Yeah.
But this time was different.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think Peter had already seen him do so many things, walk on the water, do these other miracles.
Mhm.
Didn't Peter think, obviously he didn't, that if Jesus wanted to, he could just get away or kill these people or do whatever?
Yeah.
But no, he was gonna defend him.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
It is.
I mean, he should have known that Jesus was going, you know,
Yeah.
was capable of that
Yeah.
by what he'd seen those 3 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And still didn't.
I think early on in our lesson 1, maybe this one, we described him as a powerhouse personality. You act and then you think about it.
Exactly.
And so the spurious of the moment, he just, without thinking, without putting all that together. And that's where we get into trouble, when we don't put the previous lessons learned together. And we string them together and they form a warning. Don't do that. When we forget that, it's just like hit the reset button and go out like we've never learned anything. That's why we keep making the same mistakes, because we don't learn, okay? But, you know, we're human, okay? More than anything.
I was gonna say the same thing with you. I mean, all the miracles that God has performed in my life, and still when something happens, my first thing is, oh,
Yeah.
you know, why'd that happen? Instead of saying, oh, well.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, sometimes I do it, but,
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah.
too many times I've
Yeah.
doubted God at first.
yeah. Did you catch in 13 what Noah read? He read here, verse 7. Look at verse 7 again. Jesus answered and said unto him, when Peter first objected to this whole idea, this whole notion that he would wash his feet, then when he, verse 6, then when he came to Simon Peter, because Simon Peter's watching this, he's watching them one by one, he's watching them wash the apostles' feet, and then he's probably, it's building up. He's building up, this indignation is building up, but he hasn't said anything yet. It's only when Jesus comes to him and he's about to wash his feet, he wants to separate himself from those other disciples who allowed it, who allowed their Lord to lower himself. He says, no way, I'm not going to be responsible for this. There's no way, okay? Verse 7, Jesus answered and said unto him, what thou do, thou knowest not now, but thou shalt know hereafter. We don't know it all now. And in the moment, we only know what we remember and bring forward into the moment. You don't have full understanding right now. And that's what the discipleship is. It's about growth. Okay? What we need to be careful of is our attitude, our actions, and our words done and spoken out of ignorance. Because we think we got it all, we think we got a handle on it right now. We think we have enough information to make a determination and a judgment. A lot of times we don't, right? You don't understand now. You don't have a full picture yet. So hold off before you make any rash decisions, okay? Isn't that what he's saying? So that's our life as a disciple. That's why we need to, something we need to rein it in and not just, you know, on a spur of a moment, say things or do things out of impulse, out of irrational response, okay? Because we don't have the full picture. Okay, we need to be careful, because if we're not, we're going to be sweeping up broken glass. All this glass that we acted and or spoke out of indignation, and now we got to, now it's clean up on aisle 7, right? Because, you know what I'm saying? Clean up, because we just understand that we don't know it all now. Okay? All right. But to put some teeth into it, okay, because Peter still didn't get that. He still wanted to argue. Verse 8. Peter then replied to that, said, "Thou shalt never wash my feet." He was still on that in that track. Okay? So Jesus had to then rise to that objection. As his objection was increasing, his indignation was rising, so Jesus had to put some teeth in it and respond to it. So you meet resistance, a certain level of resistance, with equal resistance. Okay? And so he said, all right, fine, but what? You'll have no inheritance with me. Oh, you got to give him more information. And
Well, I was just going to say, you know, it seems like all throughout, you know, the ministry of Jesus that Peter had done certain things and spoken up, and that's recorded for us to learn about. But it seems like in rapid succession here, kind of like what Rachel was saying right now, is like you just were warned what's going to happen. You know, Jesus could have said before the transfiguration there, he could have said, "Now Peter, don't say anything." You know, he'd have been like, "Okay, I better be quiet." You know? He probably would have said something anyway.
yeah.
And Jesus said, "You know, you're going to deny me." "No, I'm not." Well, he did it anyway. So it's almost like in rapid succession, and you would think that after 3 years of intense training, like he sent Peter and John out to go do prepare the upper room and all that. I mean, he was always being selected for things. You would think that he would probably get it, but at the end of those 3 years, but he didn't. So much so that after he denied him, after all that he said he would never do, and he confessed him as Christ and all those things, at the end he just said, "I'm going to go back to my old life." As if the previous 3 years didn't mean anything to him. I'm just going to go back to fishing. It's like, but at some point, and it's the beauty of it, at some point, Peter put it all together and stopped just being rash in his words. And I hope you cover 1st and 2nd Peter, because a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
So we can see the completed.
Yeah, we'll look at the converted man from that angle, you bet, oh yeah. But, how many of you look at Facebook once in a while?
Once a month.
I'm noticing, and this is classic, it's humorous, it's true, but it's humorous. I mean, a man finds it humorous, we'll find out here in a second. But there's comparisons between a man's brain and a woman's brain. And
Be careful.
they showed,
Well, maybe not.
We gotta learn from Peter.
they showed an outline of a store. And they showed the aisles. And they showed 2 comparisons. When a man walks into a store, okay, and they showed, you know, like the direction he took, his path, okay? In the door, over to the aisle, down the aisle, found what he wanted, and came back out. Paid for it, came back out.
That's how I shop. That's how I shop. I don't like shopping.
That's not how I
I
shop.
conquer and get out.
Oh, they wanted to make a point. Right below that was the same store. Okay, only this is how a woman shops. Hello, man. In the front door, okay, let me put it this way, the only 2 points that were similar was in the front door, cash register, out the front door. In the in-between, there wasn't an aisle that wasn't covered. Crisscrossing all over the entire store.
Only if I can't find something.
Yeah.
Such a liar.
There was another one, okay? There was a 24-hour period of a man's mind from the time he wakes up to the time he sleeps, goes to bed, okay? With these, what do you call those little fancy or little funny emoticons?
Emojis.
Emotions? What?
Emojis.
Emojis, okay, so now you know what I'm talking about,
Emoticons.
okay.
Emojis.
Icons that have emotions, okay. So, okay, the first one is just ordinary one, he's awake, he wakes up, okay? And then throughout his day, they're just like almost very, very little expression, like a little or all the way through, okay? Till finally, the last one is sleep, okay? Now, right below that, and the only two that they had in common was the waking up and the going to sleep. In between that, every animated emotion that you could think of, I mean, the faces were off the charts. I mean, every.
Exactly. Maybe you should get to the point. It's gonna turn ugly here in a second if you don't. What's your point?
A man chuckles at that because it just makes him more thankful he's a man. But anyway.
Good point.
Okay. So why did I say that? Because we're not studying a female, we're studying a man. Okay, so we're studying a man who's all over the map. Here's normal. Okay, so we make fun of a female and her the way her brain is wired, okay, and how from a man's frame of mind, her wiring panel, it's got a lot of extra wires on it, okay, and some of them we think aren't plugged into the right socket, okay. But we're looking at a man's diagram here of being up and down and up and down and up and down, okay? And this is what Jesus is trying to say, look, I don't want this extreme emotionalism attached to your being a disciple. Oh, you're not going to make it. You know, even in the Indy 500, everybody only has a certain amount of gasoline that you're allowed. You can't just keep refilling. You're all given so many gallons of fuel, and if you mismanage that fuel, so at the 500th lap, you haven't managed your fuel, you're coming in on fumes, and it could cost you the race. You burnt it all too soon, okay? And so he says, I don't want you burned out on this. Don't burn out on me here. Just level off, okay? Take it in stride. Understand that you don't know it all. So instead of trying to reach out there and learn something maybe that's too early or too soon or take on more than what you can handle, just let it come to you. It'll come to you. Okay? Sufficient for today is what?
Trouble.
The trouble. Okay? Yeah.
I was gonna say, we would consider Peter, if you wanna put him in today's terms, he'd be an alpha male.
Yeah.
Because he was the one always out there,
Uh-huh.
center of attention,
Yeah.
spoke up first, was the loudest.
Yeah.
I mean, but then, and all of this would mean basically nothing. We would be ridiculing Peter
Yeah.
if it wasn't for 1st and 2nd Peter and
Yes.
Acts.
Yes.
We would be saying, this guy just wasted Jesus' time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an example for us, but he never got it.
Right.
But he got it.
Yeah.
Man, did he get it.
Man, did he get it.
I mean, it wasn't anybody else but Peter standing up there in chapter 2 of Acts and
Yeah.
preaching that. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you preach that if you're not up and down
Right.
a little bit? Obviously, Jesus had to corral this personality that was already there.
Yeah.
Peter didn't become like that when he was called from the seashore. He was already like that.
Right.
But Jesus said, I need somebody like this,
Yeah.
because I need someone to kickstart this.
Yeah.
I need someone to get out there
Yeah.
and be able to preach a sermon like this,
Yeah.
to convict and to
Yeah.
talk to the brethren. And they said, well, could anything good come out of where they're from? These guys are fishermen.
Yeah.
but man,
Yeah.
it was powerful.
Yeah, it was absolutely powerful, and all he was trying to do was harness that energy and make it for his glory and not just our, feel good, okay? So you're right, alpha male, okay? Yeah, a little bit of hormonal imbalance. But alpha male, yeah.
Well, and it's like we're along the same lines that Brother Andy was saying. I mean, Peter obviously was bold,
Uh-huh.
but that's not always a good thing.
Yeah.
So I think, through that, he learned how to use it, but the Lord also used it to his good. And I think
Yes.
he does the same thing with us and our
Yeah.
personality traits.
Yes.
Sometimes we need to chill
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Or, things
Yeah.
need to be tweaked and,
You're right,
different
right.
things.
Yeah.
But he still uses
Yeah.
us in the ways that we are best to
Yeah.
be used.
Yeah.
Whether we're teachers or encouragers or prayers.
So let me illustrate what you just said by this then, okay? Let's just do this. Let's just trim these a little bit, okay? So instead of them being, so far, let's just kind of cap them off a little bit, okay? And so that instead of being, way over the top and way down, he's going to use this, because that represents our personality. So instead of destroying the personality, folding it and throwing it away and making new, I mean, if he did that for every one of us, we'd all be the same. Right? We would all be the same. Okay? My wife's thinking, oh, that'd be boring if she was like me. Okay? Right? That'd be awful. All right? So let's just take your personality and let's just work with it. Let's just clip off the extremes, but we're going to keep some of the highs and some of the lows, because it's the highs that drive us and push us, right? It's the lows that remind us that we need the Lord, right? Because if you don't have any lows, then you're just kind of running on your own energy. Okay, you need these. You just don't need them so bad that they throw you off. Okay, they're there to help you come up to the next high. Okay, then another low, but the next high is kinetic energy. It's supposed to, remember that. You guys remember those tops we had as kids? They were shaped like this. It had a plunger on top. Okay, and you just push that thing, and this thing is just spinning around, and then you just let it go, and it would just kind of go all over the room. You got it going, and then just watched it go, okay? So life is that continual plunging and plunging and plunging, and just ramp us up and let us go, okay? But we want to stay on the path. While we do that, we want to make sure we stay on the path, okay? Straying from the path, that's danger. Okay, where did we stop? Looks like I've got, is it straight up here? Let's see. We've got about 3 minutes. We have time to get Roman numeral number 13. So Sarah, let's give that to you, Roman numeral number 13.
Peter's denial of Jesus. Can you imagine how Peter must have felt when he realized that just moments before he had bravely asserted to Jesus and the rest of the apostles he would never deny, that he would never deny Christ? This had to have been the darkest moment of his life. Peter's spirit was deeply crushed, causing him to run away and weep bitterly over what he had done. Perhaps you too have had, at one time or another, a similar heartbreaking experience. Maybe you felt so ashamed you could just die. I imagine that is how Peter was feeling right about this time.
I mean, honestly, wouldn't you feel,
Yeah.
you stood up and bragged on yourself, maybe they will, but not me, you can count on me, and then you do that? Imagine, because there had to be eye contact between Peter and Jesus at some point. And there was eye contact, okay? Right after that third time, Jesus looked over at Peter, right? Have you ever imagined what that look was?
No.
I told you so.
I think it was, I told you so, but I think it was mixed with compassion. I think it was a compassionate I told you so, but I think in that was a heartbreak also.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want this for you, I just foretold it. Okay. Ben, you had your hand up. Oh, I thought you had your hand up, I think you were gonna say something. Oh.
Well, that's what I was gonna.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
When Christ turned, when Christ turned and looked at it, then when he led him away, is when it dawned on Peter, that's when he got the slap side the head.
Yeah.
You already did it.
Yeah, he realized, and then he went out and wept, and the Bible makes sure we understand the dynamics here, he wept bitterly, okay? I mean, bitterly, it wasn't just crying, it was a wail, okay, a wailing, okay? All right, so let's finish that part of it.
C. But as bad as Peter's denial was, that experience wasn't the most important thing. Getting past it, however, was the most important thing. And that goes for all of us. Our experiences are there to teach us, to train, and to bring us to a maturity in our Christian walk. How we handle our trials, how we work through them, and whether we should have the character to recover is what the Lord is mostly interested in. And therefore we should be too.
And that's what Andrew keeps saying, okay, we're not gonna stop at this, are we? We're gonna see the finished product, aren't we? Yeah, we're gonna go there, okay, we're gonna go there, okay? All right, let's stop right here. Picking up some speed here. Move the change to Roman numeral number 14. So pick it up there next week.